Hi guys. So my God, those of you living in Selangor, hope you guys are hanging in there. Last few days without water, absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, right, this is a time where where all of us are supposed to do our part and stay at home, not having with our water supply disrupted. That that really is not cool. And what I do not understand is how is this fiasco allowed to repeat itself over and over again. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyways, today, well, my wife and sister-in-law just went out for groceries, so I got the task of managing this little princess here, and I'm just gonna take my opportunity to to do a video to speak to you guys. So in today's throwback review, okay, now here you go, here you go. Okay, in today's throwback review, I'll be looking back at the Proton Preve. Wrote a lot of articles about that car. I'm just going to only focus on four. Okay, so back, the Preve was launched in 2012, and at that time, when the car was just about to launch, it was when DRB Highcom came in and took over Proton, if you remember that time. Okay, so the Preve also turned out to be the last launch of the then MD Datuk Syed Zainal, whom we all of many of us in the media line hold him to great respect, and I think he really, of all the MDs of Proton that I've dealt with over the years, he stands out as one who really had a lot of passion in him, a lot of fire in him, and he was, and one thing that I liked is that he took it upon himself to present the products at launch. Yes, you want to go down? You want to go down? Okay, you want to go down? Come, let's go down. Okay, I'll probably be watching you from here. Okay, so yeah, Datuk Syed Zainal, great guy, great MD for Proton at the time. So the Preve was his last launch, and yeah, so first driving impressions. I wrote this story on AutoWorld back at that time. Now, I think there was a lot of rumor at that time that the Preve was supposed to be a replacement model of the previous gen Persona. Personally, I believe that was meant to be the case, but somewhere along the line, they scrapped that decision, and what happened was that they just discontinued the upper variants of the Persona. They kept the Persona B line, all right, and they just launched the Preve to sit. So you have the Persona B line, the base model Persona, then you have the Preve, then on top of it you have the Inspira, and they also discontinued the Inspira 1.8 liter models. Now, fun fact, at that time, I remember during a roundtable discussion, Dato' Syed Zainal actually mentioned that Proton were working on a 2-liter manual variant of the Inspira, and years down the line, years after that, I've been also hearing rumors that somewhere in either Tanjung Malim or in Shah Alam, there is a container of manual gearboxes, right, that would have went into 2-liter Proton Inspiras, but well, that did not happen. So here we are, and coming back to the Preve, there was a long build up, okay, to the launch event, which I will not run through again, but what I can tell you, what I will start off with was that there was a preview drive just before the launch, and what did I say? So they will be offering the Preve in three variants. They had the executive, which is available as a manual and a CVT, and they have the premium, all right, which is a CVT only. So the premium version had the CFE turbocharged engine, 138 horsepower, 205 newton meters of torque, no direct injection. Now there was a surprise in where the executive model was concerned, because we were initially anticipating that Proton would use the Campro CPS engine in the mid-spec model, but it turns out that they went ahead to use the 108 horsepower IFM Plus engine from the Saga FLX instead. So that was a bit of a surprise. Okay, and yeah, so you had three specs, all right. There's the 108 horsepower executive manual, the same engine in the executive CVT, and then the 138 horsepower turbo in the premium model. All right, so the Preve was actually built from the Exora's platform, but with one major change: the rear suspension. So the Exora had torsion beam, and Proton and the Preve got multi-link rear suspension. An interesting fact about the Preve's rear suspension design is that it very much mimics the Ford control blade suspension design. Now, those of you familiar with the previous gen, with the Ford Focus, with the previous gen Mondeo and the S-Max, or even the Volvo, the previous gen Volvo S60, XC60s, those with the old Ford platforms, right? The unique aspect of the Ford control blade design was that the trailing arm was a very thin, very narrow member. Okay, so as you know, with multi-link rear suspension, right, you have two independent arms, okay, that go like that, all right, that goes like that, all right, and they are the lateral arms, and this is the body of the car, right? So you have the lateral arms that go in this direction, and you have the trailing arms here. Okay, so most of the time trailing arms, they are of a very bulky design, but Ford made a very narrow blade type design with their rear suspension. And interesting side story, after it debuted in the first generation Focus, that Focus slaughtered the Volkswagen Golf in terms of handling, the Golf Mark IV. And the story I heard was that Volkswagen actually pinched the chassis engineers that worked on the first gen Ford Focus over, and as a result, the Mark V Golf, right, had a very similar looking rear suspension design. You also see that in the Scirocco. Okay, you jack up a Golf Mark V or a Scirocco, you will notice that the rear suspension design is very similar to Ford's rear suspension design. Excuse me, guys. Okay, sorry guys, coming back to where I was. So, but one thing about the Ford control blade design is that they had separate spring shocks. Okay, so their spring and so you have their shock absorbers. Okay, and the springs mounted separately. The Preve used the same trailing arm design, but it still maintained a coil over spring setup. There is a very positive result of that design, because the Preve had fantastic boot space. I think a lot of us forgot about it. The Preve had 508 liters of boot space, which is, I think, one of the segment's biggest boot. Okay, it had a space saver spare tire, and yeah. So in terms of equipment, rear disc brakes are standard, ABS standard, EBD, active headrest. The top spec model has push start button, auto folding side mirrors, auto wipers, and ESC. Although Later on, Proton made stability control and 6 airbag standard for all variants of the Preve. Okay, so let me just read back what I wrote at that time. So it was a very short 160 kilometer. The previous session was a 160 kilometer drive across a variety of roads. We tried out both. We actually managed to try out all three variants, right? The manual, the executive CVT and the turbo version. So let me see what else. Well, the manual version was the most fun, I mentioned, and the executive CVT model turned out to be a surprise. It wasn't as underpowered as we thought it would be. It was able to reach about 150 to 160 kilometers per hour without too much effort, although there was a lot of noise inside the cabin at the time. But overall, the overall refinement of that car, definitely at that time we felt it was much improved over earlier Proton models. The CFE in particular, because that engine had a bit more power, had a bit more torque, so it was able to sustain, high cruising speeds with less effort. Okay, and as a result, it allowed us to enjoy a more refined ride along the way. But that is notwithstanding the noise coming from the Punch CVT. Okay, so I think I commented at that time, spot on balance in terms of ride quality and handling sharpness. Stability at high speeds up to 200 kilometers per hour is beyond reproach. Just to clarify, I wasn't behind the wheel when the car hit 200 kilometers per hour. Okay, yeah. So but that was just a preview drive. Although I did mention as well that ride and handling is the stand-up quality, but we still have build reservations of its build quality, and there is still work to be done in terms of overall powertrain refinement. So we will jump on. Let me go and so then later on the Preve was launched, and let me just go straight to the test drive report that I prepared. Yeah. So once again, this time with the full details. The Preve lines up with 3 variants: standard equipment, ABS, EBD, dual airbags, front active headrest, anti-pinch driver power window, steering mounted controls, remote boot release, and rear fog lights. And exclusive to the CFE model, stability control, traction control, side airbags, ISOFIX. Oh, ISOFIX was not standard. ISOFIX was only in the premium model. Auto climate control, engine start-stop button, cruise control, auto wipers, auto headlights, auto folding side mirrors, paddle shifters, and GPS navigation. The GPS is hopeless. Okay, at that time, the CFE model was priced at 73,000 ringgit with insurance, and I think at that time, I think most of you guys would agree with me. The Preve, I think overall as a design, it's a very handsome looking design, all right, and it's a design that has aged quite well. I remember telling the Proton engineers many times at that time that if they had a CFE manual version with a turbo engine, I would consider trading in my Waja at that time, right? But obviously they never got around to it. Okay, but I did. When was this? 2014. 2014, I did put up a sort of like an April Fool article, all right, on Auto, saying that Proton will be launching a manual, a 6-speed manual Preve CFE is open for bookings, and I also mentioned official price tag at 79,611 ringgit, and 6-speed manual transmission from Getrag, ECU remapped to 153 horsepower, 235 Newton meters of torque. 17-inch alloy wheels, auto folding side mirror, daytime running lights, HID headlight, push start system, 6 airbags, leather seats. Well, that was just an April Fool joke on my part. But let me tell you this. We all knew for a fact that they were working on a 6-speed manual version, the 6-speed manual engineered package to go with the CFE drivetrain. That the engineering was done on that combo, but for whatever reason, it never made into production, and well, it never will. So too bad for that. And what else did I say? So you get 60/40 split folding rear seats. You get gooseneck hinges like you did with the Waja, which is unfortunate because the previous gen Persona had those had the gas strut hinges, which I think probably they wore out fast, but it was great for boot space, because the gooseneck hinges, they really eat into boot space, whereas the gas struts in the Persona did not. Now the premium variant has remote operated boot release, but if you look at the key fob of a Preve, there's no boot release icon, because to operate the boot release you have to hold the unlock button for several seconds. Okay, it has engine start stop button, but it's useless because the car does not have keyless entry. And here's the thing, when you look at the door handle, the front door handle of the Preve, it was obviously designed to accommodate keyless entry, but that feature never made it into the car. And that sort of gives me the impression, and this is prevalent throughout, right? That sort of gives me the impression that, when I drove the Preve at the time, that car felt like it lacked that final 10% of development. It felt as if the car was rushed out for launch before it was truly ready. Yeah, so yes, you want Appa to carry you? Come, Appa carry you, okay? So that, and the funny thing is this, so you have the key fob, alright, you need to unlock the car, and you have a push start button. But in order to start the car, you need to insert the key fob into the slot. But at least in our test car, a few times, right, we push the key fob in, the key fob just bounces back out one. So you have, I remember that time when I drove that car, I have to take the key fob and I have to gently drop the key into the fob, drop the fob into the slot, and then start the car. All right. Some other media members who tested the car at that time also reported that come, you play with this, that before anybody worries, the mud comes with the car. Okay. All right. The key fob. What was I saying? Oh yeah. All right. So it has. You have to. Some of my media friends, right, who tested the car, reported that they had when they tried to start the car, the start stop button actually did not respond to commands, even though the key fob is inserted into the slot. So that was a very major bug in the car. Now then after you start the car, right, and this is the Preve, the premium model. The premium model has auto folding side mirrors, which is great. But when you start the car, you notice that why the side mirrors don't unfold out. The whole time I was like, but why didn't you do it? So after I returned the car, then what they told me was that the side mirrors unfold when you drive off and the speed exceeds 5 kilometers per hour. And I thought, that is not very smart, isn't it? Because when I drive off, usually we have the habit of checking our side, of at least glancing at our side mirrors to check that the mirror is properly aligned before you drive. So getting the side mirror to unfold as you move off wasn't particularly smart, and that is something that Proton finally rectified in the Suprema S that was launched 2 years later, and it's something that you can get any accessory shops to help you recode that. Okay, so what else did I see? So okay, now let's come to the driving review. Now, on the move, we found this combo to deliver adequate if unspectacular performance. Despite promising outputs, it appears that Proton has opted to bless the Preve with a throttle mapping that is best described as gentle. Actually, that's right. I remember when I was driving this car off the line, even full throttle, the takeoff from standstill was very relaxed. It doesn't exactly leap off the line. Yeah, so the car has a bit of a heavy feel to it, and yeah, it's not underpowered, but progress is extremely measured and linear. Wow, I was diplomatic. This characteristic is perfect for drivers who value serene progress, but those expecting Mini Cooper S levels of acceleration will be disappointed. One of the Preve's, now but here comes the good part, one of the Preve's greatest strength is most definitely ride and handling, an area where Proton demonstrates remarkable maturity beyond its years. Spring and damper rates can only be described as spot on, as the suspension maintains a dream combination of firmness and pliancy. Yes, it's okay, mommy's coming back soon, okay? The result is superb body control and agility married with a firm yet supple ride. It is a balance that very few car makers manage, and if any members of the Preve's R&D team earn their yearly bonus, the chassis engineers should most certainly be the first in line. Yeah, the Preve's handling was a strong point. The NVH also, I gave good comments of the NVH. Although the engine kicks up quite a fuss when revved, wind and road noises are kept well at bay, leaving a peaceful and serene cabin for occupants to enjoy at highway speeds. Overall, the Preve serves up a rather positive driving experience, but some marks are lost thanks to its hesitant transmission that fails to properly exploit the engine's strong mid-range torque in spirited driving. So in conclusion, the Preve represents a significant quantum leap for Proton in terms of its design and specs, but further improvements are still possible. Cabin build quality is still not on par with the competition, and operation of certain features like engine start button and auto folding side mirrors remain clumsy. The CVT could also do with more decisive programming to better exploit the superb balance of the chassis. These are flaws that can be rectified in product running changes, and Proton will certainly do well to address them. So later on, I drove the manual. Okay. But the manual Preve, from the outside, right? There is very little to differentiate between the Preve Executive and the Premium model. Same rim design, same headlights, everything looks almost exactly the same. Okay. So if you take the manual version, price is about 60,000 ringgit. And you get a 5-speed gearbox from Geartrap. Okay. It's alright. So in executive trim, items on the kit count include ABS, dual airbags. Okay, I mentioned all that earlier. So say for the CF, so the only differentiation between outside, right? If you look outside, a Preve CFE and a Preve Executive is just a CFE badge on the boot. That's it. Everything else looks exactly the same. But is when you step inside, the dash trim, the IFM models have that, that a rather unappealing, plastic, trims with bronze painted plastic trim. Okay. Whereas the premium model had, I think, almost like a piano black finish, which looked a bit more classy. And of course, the top spec model, the premium model had a tuned-in audio unit with a screen, all right, with built-in GPS. But in the base model, you still have Bluetooth and USB capability. The base model does away with the engine start-stop button, so you have to start with a key. But that slot where where the start-stop engine button supposed to be at is replaced with a card slot, so that's where you can select your touch and go cards. Why? You want to sleep? You want to sleep now? Okay, come, Appa stand up. Okay, Appa stand up. So what were my comments? The Campro engine's lack of punch is especially prevalent in the lower reaches of its rev range, and any rate of progress is barely possible without at least 4,000 RPMs on the tackle. This brings us memories of criticisms leveled against the Campro engine in its early days, and it becomes quite an issue if you have a slope to negotiate. Those of you who do not enjoy working the engine and gears will be left frustrated by the engine's shortage of low and mid-range torque. The lack of power is at least mitigated by a slick manual gear change with satisfyingly short throws. Keep the engine in higher revs and brisk progress will be yours to enjoy. But I remember there was something not so pleasant. The clutch could do with a bit more bite though. As it was my 5-year-old, my Waja was 5 years old at the time. My 5-year-old Waja with 107,000 kilometers on the clock. My 5-year-old Waja had 170,000. So at that time, 2012. So in the last 7 years, my Waja clocked about 70,000 kilometers only. Okay, all right, coming back. As a harder biting clutch in our test cars, stalling the engine was uncomfortably easy, and a boot full of revs were needed from a standing start each time. Yes, I remember this, and there was one particular incident. I was trying to come out from, I was at the T junction trying to come out to a main road. I gave it a boot full of revs, but the car was just slowly trickling out, and it was scary because cars were oncoming, and I really needed to work hard to get the car up to speed. So we can't say for sure if this is inherent to all Preves, or as a result of abuse. Our test car at 6,000 kilometers on the clock, consider a sports clutch as a possible aftermarket upgrade. That was my recommendation. So fortunately, there was nothing really amiss about our test car's ride and handling, save for the fact that there was a slight pull of the steering to the left. That aside, surface harshnesses superbly dealt with, natural fluency to the chassis during directional changes. Hydraulic steering rack, well weighted, superbly communicative in feedback. Base model Preve manual as tested proved more satisfying to drive. IFM mod the equipment deficit to the CFE does not have too many items are loose leaf over, and Proton's handiwork can still be further refined. If driving satisfaction still means something to you, the cheapest Preve becomes the more worthwhile pick of the range, though it could certainly do with more power. I remember that time when I drove this car, one thing I didn't say, but was that one of the things that I felt was that this does not feel like an upgrade from my Waja at all, right? I mean, that time my Waja was 5 years old, right? So if I was looking to change my car at that time, and I see this, I test drive this. Yes, it's a newer car with more features, but I'm not made to feel that I've gotten an upgrade. Practically the same engine, pulling a heavier body. Yes, you get a bit better refinement, but you would expect at least a lead in terms of powertrain, powertrain refinement. So, and that is me coming from a Waja Cam Pro. Those with the Waja CPS going to this would be like, shit, I'm going to a newer car and I am losing what, a good 12 horsepower. So I would say that overall, to sum up, right, the Preve was, I think the Preve would go down in history always as a car that could have been. It could have been so much more. This car had potential in it. It could have been so much more for Proton. I think if only they had done that bit more refinement to the car. All right, they worked on the refinement a bit more, pushed the launch back maybe by another half a year or so, iron out all the bugs, have that courage to push out the 6-speed manual CFE version as something like a performance derivative, because I think the Suprema S that came out after that, to me that doesn't the Suprema S has a bit of a slightly weird proportions to me, particularly its back. So it's not a car that I would look at, and yeah, I think they could have done so much more with the Preve. It's really a shame, because this car at that time, okay, granted, if you were to compare it C segment to C segment, the only thing it has going for it was its ride and handling. That's it. In terms of features, it doesn't offer anything that the competition did not offer, even though it was a big step up from Proton. But I think if they had given if the Preve had received a more competitive engine and drivetrain package, it would really have gone down as one of the best cars Proton has ever made. But unfortunately, for what they have managed, this car will go down as a case of what if. It's more, it's in a way the one that got away, right? They could have done so much more with this car, but they rushed it out before it was ready.